Hey gang, John Baccarelli here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Wednesday, May 22nd. Water temperature at Belle Isle is at 65 degrees, which is up basically 6 degrees from last week. It was 59 last week, and it's probably like 70-ish down along the mile roads in different parts of the lake with that warm water getting blown up, probably up at some of the areas in the north end too, with the crazy south-southwest winds we've had all day today. The wind's been blowing really hard all day. It started out blowing hard out of the south. It probably blew some of you guys right off of the lake. And then it clocked around and it's blowing hard west now. And I don't expect it really to have done much to our side of the lake, especially around the shop. Maybe that north end of the lake might have got beat up pretty good when it was blowing out of the south, and maybe along the shoreline there at the Metro Park. But honestly, with it blowing hard offshore and gonna then settle down tonight and be light tomorrow, I kind of doubt that it's really changed much for you guys that have been down through the mile roads and sight fishing smallies and everything. So I'm gonna guess that hasn't affected much of anything at all. I was hoping to get a satellite image, but the darn thing didn't update at all today, so there were no satellite images today. If I get a satellite image between now and the weekend, if it does update, I'll post that online on our Facebook page, and you can see that there. But I really don't think the wind affected a whole lot. And we're still getting mud lines coming out from like the Clinton River and the spillway and anywhere else, any kind of drains or anything, because we've had those kind of like flash, I don't want to call them flash floods, but we had some pretty darn quick, heavy rainfall earlier this week. So I know that's keeping some mud lines going out there, but it really hasn't been affecting much along the shoreline where you guys are smallmouth fishing. So I think that's all going to be just fine. It's going to really be interesting to see what happens next week. We're expecting a real big cool down. Well, let's talk about the weather real quick. So the best couple of days looks like it's going to be tomorrow and Friday. You're going to have pretty light winds, more or less offshore tomorrow. And then Friday is supposed to be maybe a little bit out of the east, but it's still going to be really light. And then going into the weekend forecast looks like maybe a chance of rain in the morning on Saturday, and then who knows what on Sunday and Monday. It's still kind of far out to tell timing, and the devil's always in the details when it comes to rain and thunderstorms and all that good stuff. But anyways, it looks like at least from what I'm seeing, the pick days are going to be tomorrow and Friday as far as the weather just being pretty gorgeous. And then next week looks like we got a big cool down coming. And what I had started to say was it's going to be really interesting to see what that cool down does to the lake temps. Because if it doesn't drop them back much, I'm thinking we're going to start to see mayflies starting to hatch. We're already seeing a lot of the gnats and things starting to hatch. That south wind that we had today was blowing a lot of them in by the store. And so generally right after they hatch, usually when we'll start to see the mayfly hatch. And then when that happens, we can expect to see a topwater smallmouth bite get going, which is kind of where I was going with all that. And I was so curious, and if you remember last week I said, I meant to go back and look at some of the old videos. So I did go back and look at the video that I did last year at this exact same time, literally almost to the day. And it was very interesting because we're basically a week ahead of last year. When I looked at last year's video, we were at 59 degrees. So basically we were last week's temp. And a lot of the same things were applying. I talked about the perch and that out in the deep water and everything. So everything we're just basically a week ahead of where we were last week or last year. And at this time last year, we were looking forward to a huge 80 plus degree warm up coming. So it's kind of interesting. And I encourage you guys to go back and look at some of those old videos on YouTube. And since we've been doing these fishing reports for several years, it is very interesting to go back. And since I talk about the water temps right on the get-go when I do the reports, it's really easy to just click on it, listen to that, and go, nope, doesn't apply, or yes, it's the exact same temps that we're at now. And generally, that water temp is a really good indicator of what's going on out on this lake from year to year to year. So anyways, kind of enough said about that, I think. Let's see, smallie bite. I kind of touched on that. A lot of you guys are chasing those fish still in really shallow. A lot of those bedfish, and just because and I know last week I said, most of the fish are post-spawn, and they are, but just because the majority of the fish on this lake are post-spawn right now doesn't mean you're still not going to find plenty of fish in shallow and on beds and in all different stages of the spawn out here on the lake, depending on exactly where you are, because things change and there's just different populations of fish all over the lake. Just like those perch that are still out there spawning in 20 plus feet of water when all the fish that along the shorelines have been done for weeks. It's just a different population of fish, different water temperatures, and they have no idea that the water temps, along the shoreline are 70 degrees by us, because that's just not where they are. So they're affected by their little local environments, and they're, impacted by hours of daylight and everything, but that water temp is usually like one of the final triggers. So you got different temps all over the lake, especially with the cold water coming in from Lake Huron, which will cool us down next week because they're forecasting highs only in the 70s and then lows like almost down. I mean, we'll see, but I saw lows like down around 50. So that's going to drop things back a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens anyways next week. But as Mike Coleman always proves with his kayak, he can always go out and tear his thumb up out there almost every darn day just fishing with his kayak on big smallies. So if he can do it out there in the kayak, I know you guys can do it too when you've got the mobility to run all over the lake. So, and Mike's, for the record, I know Mike's been playing with using our worms, our Wyandotte worms that we sell for all the walleye guys, and he's been out there proving a point, hammering smallies on various colors of our Wyandotte worms, because I always tell everybody, the history on that worm is that worm really is a drop shot worm, and everybody uses them for walleyes up here, but if you go down south, it's a drop shot worm, and so it'll fish good on Ned rigs, and you can drop shot it. Obviously, you can drop shot it too, but anyways, so that's what Mike's been out there pounding them on this week, just to prove points on those worms. White bass are starting to finally show up out here at the point at Metro and at South River Road, but it sounds like that South River Road bite, those fish have been staying down, and I'm not quite sure what's up with that. No pun intended, but they haven't been blowing up on the surface yet, but I'm sure they will soon. Maybe the forage is just different down there right now, and so they don't have those big schools of bait to blow up on the surface, because that's normally what they do. But anyways, the fish are there. Guys have been catching them. Should be fish at Metro. Should be fish at all the points along the lake. Blossom Heath. Anywhere where you can get out onto the lake. Even the mouth of the spillway usually draws a bunch of white bass in there as well. For you guys that like to chase them, they are fun. I really like to see them boiling on the surface, and I like to catch them on top water too when we can do that. But they fight real hard. They're decent table fare if you clean them the right way and get them on ice right away. That's kind of one of the key things on them, is either keep them alive till you're going to clean them, or put them immediately on ice, and then I take that dark lateral line out after I skin them, and then they're pretty decent table fare. So it's nothing wrong with keeping some white bass. Walleye are still going strong. I hate to sound like a broken record, but still going. St. Clair River, Detroit River, still, if you got the right watercolor in and around the Metro Beach and the mouth of Harley, and then down through the mile roads. And now we're starting to get more reports of guys getting them out by the main shipping channel as well, which shouldn't be any surprise, since those fish coming up out of the Detroit River, they kind of split into three different groups, right? Some of them will just continue right on up the channel. They'll hang a little while out by the dumping grounds, and those fish just keep kind of moving up. Some of them go down along the shoreline up into the mile roads, and then you got a lot of those fish that go up along the Canadian shoreline as well. So, but anyways, those fish are moving. You basically have fish all over the lake right now. Find the right water conditions. As the weeds come up, it's going to tend to concentrate those fish a little bit more. But you got fish basically all over the lake. South Channel is going now as well too. And again, that's kind of part of the main shipping channel, so that shouldn't surprise anybody either. So you got fish kind of all over the lake. Choose where you want to fish for them, and again, base it on the weather. And we tell that to guys all the time when they come in from out of town. A lot of folks get used to like launching out of one specific launch, and then if the wind's out of a lousy direction for that launch, they get all dejected because they feel like their day is ruined, and we're constantly redirecting people around the lake to different locations just because to get out of the wind, to get into better conditions. And when you're on big water like Lake St. Clair, that wind direction is critical. It determines whether or not you're going to go out somewhere and have life-threatening conditions, or if you go somewhere different on the lake and it's flat calm. So it's a matter of the wind direction. So you got lots of opportunities to catch lots of different species all over the lake, and it just kind of depends on the size of your boat and where you launch from, whether you can safely get to them or not. One other thing I was reminded of in my last year's video, that I did talk about this being Memorial Weekend. And so I wanted to say something here too, just to remind everybody that Memorial Weekend is really where we remember those that have given the ultimate sacrifice of their lives for us to have the freedoms that we hold so dear, including like my hat here with the Second Amendment. So those are rights, which are not just privileges; they are rights. And we have been given, or we're allowed to maintain those rights only through the sacrifice of those people in our military that have allowed us to have the freedoms that we have here in this country. So I just want to say thank you to all the servicemen and women out there, and to the families that have had somebody that's made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have the freedoms that we have. And with that, I will let you go for the Memorial Weekend. We'll hopefully see you in the shop, and get out and enjoy the weather as long as it plays nice. Hey gang, if you like our content, hit the little subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be notified as soon as we put out new stuff.